Whew, right. So you're talking to a Republican with the principle of smaller or limited government, right? And so I think part of the question becomes, do we have big enough problems that government needs to be involved a little bit more and or involved more strategically? I think we should start probably at the levels of community organizations, church, for example. I think we need to hire principals who, believe in and are willing to talk to and charge parents with doing the basic stuff of parenting. That's not a government thing, that's a community thing. I think, again, churches have a role to play. Many Black Americans are very observant of religion and participate in church. So I don't know that the government has a role to play in it as much as what we can do is incentivize maybe some pay for performance in education. I think what government can do to get us to this level of limited government, but also folks who are students who are graduating and can actually read and sign their name, is we can incentivize maybe some innovation in school structure. I'm a fan of looking at the infrastructure that we have, school infrastructure, where enrollment is dropping, but we have these big buildings. Those big buildings, can they be converted into living space? But some of the smaller buildings and infrastructure around communities can be converted into one-room Montessori schools.
Sure.
Where we can do more innovative ways of reaching students. I think we have to begin with the end in mind, and we need to think about by, 2026 we're approaching basically, by 2030, how many of our students in urban areas do we want to be literate? And we need to plan and build our structure based upon that. Get out of this idea of it's the system's fault, it's personal responsibility. It's both, but I think personal responsibility and family and community preparedness of students has a larger role to play. So how are we going to get there? And I think we need to charge parents with doing the thing. We need to charge parents with and tell parents, we need you reading to your kids. We're not going to babysit your children because they're caught, many of them who can't read. What are they going to do? To make the ends meet? How are they going to be productive members of society? I think we need to get back to a point of, fireside chats. We need to get back to a point where we are making sure that American citizens are contributing consciously to what American culture as a whole is going to look like, and stop hand-holding people and saying that, it's not your fault, it's not your fault. Because what does that get us? It doesn't change outcomes.
And it's so interesting because when you hear this, again, I have to talk about the deficit I see on the Democratic side. Whenever this conversation comes up, they'll attack Republicans and say, well, you want to get rid of abortion, but then when the kid is here, you don't want to help feed the kid. You don't want to help with child care. You don't want to, they talk about all these other things, but going back to the self-reliance or the self-reliant approach to this, nobody told you went and had a baby. So if you are not, I think that's again another missed opportunity. If you are not socioeconomically positioned such that you are prepared to be a parent and you choose to be a parent anyway, then you made the choice to make your life more difficult. And I think that needs to be said directly so that people can understand, hey, just like Trump said, hey, 2 years, he's trying to push 2 years and you're off welfare. I would even go so far, going back to you talking about incentives. Hey, you're a single mother, you have a child out of wedlock, okay, you're gonna be off in 2 years. Now you wanna get that extended 2 years, or you have a second child and you had a GED, before you can get the extension, you have to go get a high school diploma.
Right.
If you had a high school diploma, you have to go get an associate's degree,
right,
or some kind of certification. If that way there's a direct connection between your behavior and your access, because that's what life is about.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is a very smart thing to do. I want to see home economics come back so people can go to Walmart and see how much diapers cost, right? And so basically you just spent an hour and a half of your work time to get some diapers that ain't gonna even last you for another week. You know what I'm saying? And so I think there's some practical elements like what you were saying. I am a fan of, and I support the idea of work requirements for welfare. The social safety net should be there for, we talked about this before, I do believe, the social safety net should be there for people who need it in a pinch. It shouldn't become a hammock where you can hang out, right? It ain't supposed to be the place where you reside.
It should not be, and it certainly should not be multi-generational.
Exactly. Exactly. It should not be multi-generational. And I think those are things that we all should be willing to say to people without feeling like we are racist. And we will be accused of that, but they'll come along once they achieve success.
You can call me anything. You can call me whatever, but
Right.
but that does not negate the truth.
Right, that part.
You know,
Yeah.
I've had conversations with people where they will, well, when I will hear them say about someone who's on Section 8, man, they're living better than us. And then I think about the person who says that about where they are. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, they're not. Because at the end of their lives, they don't have equity in anything that they can pass on to their children. So there's just such a mindset in this country that needs to be reset. And it's going to require more responsible, moral leaders that are willing to say the hard truths.
Right. Yeah, and willing to meet people where they are in their communication of that truth. The way that you stated that, though it's a hard truth, is far more eloquent than some of the ways when your typical Republican gets the mic and how they talk about it, right? So think about where you ask people, think about where you want your grandchild to be. What do you want them to be able to access? How do you think we're going to get there, right? Here are some on-ramps. The government has incentivized, for example, apprenticeship, right? How about, if you are talented and skilled in artistry and the like, how about you participate in this apprenticeship with, a firm that does graphic design and or a firm that design buildings, a civic engineering firm, so that you can, change your family tree. So there are ways that the blame game doesn't really get people to building the infrastructure, the scaffolding that they need in order to change the outcomes for their family.
I love that you said that, because I had a recent conversation with an educator, and I suggested, or we were kind of collaborating in the conversation. I suggested we need to revamp our educational system to a model that as early as possible we identify strengths and proclivities, and then push those individuals to be the best at what they already have a natural aptitude or desire to do.
Absolutely.
If someone is going to be a plumber and they're going to be a master plumber, they probably don't need to study 15th century French art.
Right.
That's probably, they might have an interest, and maybe that's an elective down the road or something, but we should be pushing people in what they're good at, as opposed, right now, the educational system we have is a funnel that puts everyone through this funnel, and we try to get very similar outcomes.
Yeah. We have to really revisit the way we think about education as a community. Because, let's keep it real. There are ways, and I know you've probably experienced this too, people tell you you're talking white, you acting white. I don't hear it as much now because I'm 52, so anybody telling me that now is like an extra special case. But when I was younger, people would say things like that. There's been whole bodies of research about the idea that some folks in the Black community feel that your adherence to standard English dialect, your adherence or pursuit of education is being like white people. And the reality is there's nothing exceptionally white about wanting to be able to navigate this society and be so in a successful way. If I wanted to go to France and be successful, I'm gonna have to learn me a little French, right? And I'm gonna have to speak it in a way that people understand that I'm competent at it, and that I'm welcomed into the fold, so to speak. I think that the role that men play in society, this is a difficult one, because how do I say this?